Picture this. You are standing on a windswept hill in rural France, surrounded by thousands of ancient standing stones stretching into the distance. They look like an army frozen in time, silent witnesses to a world that vanished long before recorded history began. Or you are deep inside an Irish passage tomb older than the pyramids, where sunlight pierces a stone chamber on the winter solstice. Locals for centuries have said these monuments were built by giants, massive beings who hunted mammoths and wrestled cave bears. They left behind bones so large they dwarf anything human, scattered across fields and hillsides across the entire European continent. What if those stories were not just myths? What if science has now pieced together the real story of Europe's vanished giants? Through bone fragments, ancient DNA, climate records, and painstaking archaeological debates, researchers are closing in on the truth. Today, we are diving deep, really deep, into this mystery. Not conspiracy fluff or exaggerated hoaxes, but real grounded discoveries. We are talking about findings from Atapuerca in Spain, studies on Neanderthal genomes, and 2026 modeling from Université de Montréal. By the end of this, you will understand who these giants really were and why they dominated Europe for hundreds of thousands of years. You will also learn about the perfect storm of events that made them vanish from the face of the earth forever. This is a long journey through ice ages, megafauna, interbreeding, disease, and monumental human ambition spanning hundreds of thousands of years. If you love getting lost in deep history, stick with me until the final revelation. You will not regret it. Hey everyone, welcome back, or welcome for the first time to the channel. We are so glad you are here with us today. If you love stories that blend real science with ancient wonder, hit subscribe right now and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. We are building a library of forgotten worlds, and this episode on Europe's vanished giants is going to be a true standout. Drop a like if you are already hooked by the idea of real giants existing in our ancient past. It helps the algorithm share these deep dives with more curious minds just like yours all around the world. Let us begin at the very beginning. For as long as people have lived in Europe, legends of giants have echoed across generations. In Britain, tales speak of Gog and Magog, or massive beings who helped construct the great monument of Stonehenge. In Scandinavia, the frost giants of Norse mythology clashed with gods in epic and world-shaking battles that shook the heavens. Head to Sardinia, and you will find the Tomba dei Giganti, enormous Bronze Age tombs with massive stone slabs forming burial chambers. Locals insisted only superhuman strength could have erected such towering and immovable structures across the ancient Sardinian landscape. Germany has its Hunengraber, or giants' graves. The Netherlands calls similar stone structures Hunebedden, which literally means giants' beds in Dutch. In Brittany, France, the alignments at Carnac feature over 3,000 menhirs, and folklore attributes them to giants who dropped stones while fighting. Even in Malta, the Giganti temples translate directly as place of giants, linking the ancient builders to superhuman beings. These are not isolated superstitions. They represent how our ancestors tried to explain the impossible things they found around them. Enormous bones turned up in fields. Stone monuments seemed beyond human capability. The landscape itself appeared shaped by forces far bigger than everyday life. But science has moved beyond legend. Through radiocarbon dating, ancient DNA extraction, and population modeling, researchers have reconstructed a far more compelling reality. The giants were real in their own way. Robust, archaic humans, colossal animals, and communities achieving superhuman feats through cooperation. And yes, studies as recent as 2026 have helped solve key pieces of the puzzle of why they disappeared from Europe. Let us travel back further than most history channels dare, into the Pleistocene, when Europe was a land of literal giants. Start with Homo antecessor, one of the earliest known hominins in Europe, discovered at the Grandolina site in Atapuerca, Spain. These fossils date to around 1.2 million to 800,000 years ago and represent some of the first European pioneers. While not massive by later standards, males stood roughly 1.6 to 1.8 meters tall with robust and powerful builds. Evidence suggests they practiced cannibalism during resource shortages, revealing the brutal survival game of those early and unforgiving European landscapes. From there, Homo heidelbergensis takes center stage, named after a massive jawbone found near Heidelberg, Germany, in 1907. These hominins lived from about 700,000 to 200,000 years ago across much of the European continent. Fossils from Boxgrove in England and sites across Europe show tall, powerfully built individuals adapted to Ice Age conditions and fierce predators. Some reconstructions put males at around 1.8 meters or taller, with heavy musculature built for endurance hunting over long distances. They crafted sophisticated stone tools and likely hunted in coordinated groups, making them formidable and intelligent predators of the ancient world. Heidelbergensis is often seen as the common ancestor to both Neanderthals and modern humans, bridging a critical gap in Europe's deep prehistory. Then, we reach the stars of the show, the Neanderthals, thriving from roughly 400,000 until about 40,000 years ago. They were not the dim-witted brutes of old cartoons. They had barrel chests, powerful limbs, and brains as large as ours. Average male height was around 5 feet 5 inches, but their bone structure reveals an almost unimaginable degree of muscular strength. They were cold-adapted powerhouses. Imagine one of them charging a woolly mammoth with a wooden spear in freezing open tundra. These were not weaklings. They were giants among men in terms of physical capability, endurance, and raw survival instinct. Speaking of literal giants, the Megafauna they shared the land with were truly awe-inspiring creatures of enormous size and power. Woolly mammoths stood 3 to 3.7 meters at the shoulder. Irish elk sported antlers up to 3.6 meters across. Cave bears outweighed modern grizzlies. Giant hyenas, enormous aurochs cattle, and cave lions all roamed freely across the ancient European landscape. Europe, during the Ice Age, was a megafauna-rich ecosystem, and Neanderthals were apex predators who took down these giants with fire and ingenuity. Sites across the continent show butchery marks on these massive animal bones, proving Neanderthals hunted and processed them regularly for food. Early Homo sapiens arriving in Europe, often called Cro-Magnons, were taller and more gracile on average, around 5 feet 9 inches or more. Yet the contrast with stocky Neanderthals fueled perceptions of deep difference that later transformed into giant legends across the continent. Neanderthals innovated in remarkable ways. They made birch bark glue, created jewelry, buried their dead, and may have produced early cave art. They adapted to repeated glacial cycles, retreating to southern refugia like Iberia, and then expanding northward again during warmer periods. So what caused these robust populations and massive beasts to vanish? This is where 21st century research truly shines with clarity. No single cause is responsible, but a powerful convergence of forces is now supported by real and compelling scientific data. Climate instability tops many lists. The Pleistocene featured wild temperature swings with rapid warming and cooling occurring over just decades at a time. A 2026 study by Ariane Burke and team at Université de Montréal modeled spatial resilience in Neanderthal and sapiens populations across Europe. It found that Neanderthals' smaller, more isolated groups lacked the broad connectivity seen across Homo sapiens' social networks during the same period. Sapiens could trade resources, ideas, and mates across larger areas, buffering shocks that smaller and isolated Neanderthal bands simply could not survive. Demographic weakness amplified the problem. A 2019 PLOS-1 study showed Neanderthal populations likely never exceeded tens of thousands continent-wide at any time. Even tiny drops in fertility or survival rates of less than 1% could doom them over millennia due to inbreeding and small group sizes. A 2024 Cell Genomics paper on the Thorin lineage revealed long genetic and social isolation in some Neanderthal groups, reducing their resilience dramatically. Diseases offer another important layer to this story. Stanford researchers in 2019 proposed that Homo sapiens brought novel pathogens into Neanderthal territories. With Neanderthals living in small, scattered bands, epidemics could devastate entire communities without leaving obvious evidence in the archaeological or fossil record. Interbreeding complicates the extinction narrative in a profound way. Most non-African humans today carry between 1 and 2% Neanderthal DNA. Studies from sites like Bachokiro show early sapiens had recent Neanderthal ancestors, pointing to real and ongoing contact between the two groups. Recent models suggest absorption rather than annihilation. Small sapiens migrations into Neanderthal territories led to genetic dilution across 10 to 30,000 years. They did not vanish completely. They live on in us today through genes that influence our immune systems, skin, and even behavior. A 2025 scientific reports model supports this gradual assimilation scenario, adding further weight to the absorption story over outright violent replacement or extinction. For Megafauna, similar overlapping forces were at work across the same critical period of rapid environmental and demographic change in Europe. Climate altered vegetation dramatically, with steppe environments shifting to forest and stressing large herbivores that depended on open grassland for survival. Human hunting pressure, especially by sapiens with better tools and growing population numbers, tipped delicate ecological balances past the point of no return. In Europe, extinctions were staggered across thousands of years, not sudden mass die-offs wiping everything out in a single catastrophic event. Africa retained more of its giant animals because humans co-evolved with them there over millions of years, giving prey time to adapt defensively. Recent work also links human-set fires in warming and drying landscapes to the eventual collapse of megafauna populations across the European continent. Debates among researchers remain heated and unresolved. Some emphasize overkill by hunters, while others give primacy to climate as the main driver. No mass graves prove organized genocide of Neanderthals, but resource competition between the two human species was almost certainly real and intense. The Lachant magnetic reversal, around 41,000 years ago, may have increased radiation exposure on Earth's surface, adding yet another layer of environmental stress. Now, let us address the monumental side of the story, the megalith builders, whose works kept the giant legends alive for millennia. Over 35,000 megalithic structures dot Europe, from Sweden all the way down to the Mediterranean islands of Malta and Sardinia. Carnac's rows of menhirs stretch for miles across the Breton countryside. Newgrange in Ireland, built around 3200 BCE, aligns precisely with the winter solstice. Stonehenge's Sarsen stones weigh up to 30 tons, and were transported roughly 25 kilometers from their quarry source in the Marlborough Downs. Experiments prove that teams of hundreds using rollers, sledges, and boats could move them, but the required organization points to highly sophisticated ancient societies. Origins of the megalith tradition trace to northwest France around 4800 BCE and then spread steadily along European coastlines over the following centuries. These were tombs, territorial markers, and astronomical observatories built by Neolithic farming communities with deep spiritual connections to their ancestors and the cosmos. Legends of giants moving stones arose simply because the scale of construction seemed utterly impossible for any ordinary group of individual human beings. Yet collective effort, shared belief, and generational commitment made these monumental achievements not only possible, but repeatable across the entire continent and beyond. Pathological cases of real tall humans with gigantism, plus misidentified mammoth and cave bear bones, added further fuel to the spreading giant myths. The giants here were innovative ancestors pooling labor for shared beliefs, not supernatural beings, but remarkable communities driven by purpose and collective will. Their monuments preserved living memory of robust past peoples and the massive animals that had once shared their dangerous and awe-inspiring world. In Ireland, Newgrange and Noath tie directly to ancient tales of powerful kings or supernatural beings who shaped the very land itself. Wales has Barclodiad Igoris, which translates as the apronful of the giantess, linking its ancient burial mound to a legendary female giant. Scandinavia blends megalithic monuments with saga traditions of the Jotun, the great frost giants who fought gods and shaped the frozen northern landscape. This pan-European pattern of giant legends shows how one era's astonishing physical reality can become the next era's mythological and supernatural story. Recent discoveries continue refining the picture with better DNA from ancient sediments, more precise dating methods, and climate data extracted from deep ice cores. 2026 studies especially emphasize social connectivity as the critical edge that allowed Homo sapiens to outlast and eventually absorb or replace Neanderthal populations. Neanderthals lasted longer in places like Gibraltar, coexisting with sapiens for millennia and contributing immune genes and physical adaptations that still benefit us today. The solved mystery is not one single eureka moment, but a synthesis of many converging lines of evidence gathered across decades of research. Robust hominins thrived through physical power and remarkable adaptation, but ultimately faced isolation, low genetic diversity, and shifting environmental conditions they could not overcome. Megafauna supported them until a combined collapse of climate stability and rising human hunting pressure brought the entire ancient ecological system crashing down. Neolithic builders then created lasting stone wonders that mythologized the deep past and kept the memory of lost giants alive for thousands of years. Interbreeding and absorption meant biological continuity rather than total loss, and their physical and genetic legacy lives on quietly inside each one of us. This ancient story teaches us about both fragility and resilience in the face of rapid and unforgiving environmental and demographic change over time. Small, specialized groups face extinction when conditions shift. Flexibility, innovation, and wide social networks are what allow populations to survive and ultimately to flourish. We are hybrids of that remarkable era, carrying ancient legacies not just in our DNA, but in the very landscapes we still inhabit. Imagine walking past a menhir today and knowing you are touching echoes of real hunters, real struggles, and real acts of collective human ingenuity. New digs in the Balkans, improved climate modeling, and advancing genetic technology promise even more revelations about this vanished world in the years ahead. What if pockets of late Neanderthals survived long enough to enter the earliest layers of European folklore and legend? Share your thoughts below. If this kept you watching all the way to the end, please like, subscribe, and share this with someone who loves ancient mysteries. Your support truly helps grow these deep dives and keeps the channel producing content that takes ancient history seriously and scientifically. Thanks for staying until the very end. Your attention and curiosity are what power everything we create here on this channel. Drop your thoughts on your favorite parts below, or suggest topics you want us to explore in future episodes of Forgotten Worlds. Stay curious, stay evidence-driven, and stay appreciative of the giants, both literal and figurative, who paved the long road that led to us. See you next time for another journey into a vanished world. Take care and peace.